seasick at any point up to your left hand side. And we also have fish identification cards if you need a little bit of help up to your right hand side. Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the World Heritage Great Barrier Reef and Green Island. Now, what makes Green Island so special is the fact that we have these beautiful lush seagrass meadows very close to our beautiful coral reef. Now, these seagrass meadows are very important ecosystems for a variety of reasons. The main one and the most important, I believe, would be the fact that it's actually an excellent carbon storage. So we've been able to determine that 1 square kilometre of seagrass actually stores more carbon than 1 square kilometre of rainforest. Now, these seagrass meadows are also a great source of food for a lot of the animals that we get out here on Green Island and the Great Barrier Reef, such as our dugongs, sea turtles, some of our herbivorous fish species. Now guys, as we do cross some of the seagrass, please keep an eye out inside that seagrass for any beautiful little baby fish that might be hiding within the sea blades, the grass blades, sorry. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the Great Barrier Reef is absolutely humongous, so it's about 345,000 square kilometres in landmass, meaning that it's actually got the same landmass size as Italy or Japan, so it's huge. It's so large you can actually see it from space. It does take up about 2,500 kilometres of our eastern coastline of Queensland, starting just out of the Fly River in Papua New Guinea, going all the way down south, with its most southern point being Lady Elliot Island off the coast of Bundaberg. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you are looking out to our right hand side at the moment, you will see some of that beautiful coral reef. Now, does anybody know if coral is a plant or an animal? So when you're looking at any piece of coral, guys, what you are looking at is a whole colony of animals known as your coral polyps. Now, these polyps are very hard to see with the naked eye, so you will need to see them under a microscope. However, they do look like little upside down jellyfish, big sac on the bottom and the tentacles on top. Now, depending on the species of corals will depend on the kind of coral that you will get. So we have two broad groups of coral to start off with. We have our hard coral and our soft coral. Now, hard coral is very rigid. It doesn't move at all in the water. And that's due to an exoskeleton that it contains made up of calcium carbonate. If you don't know what that is, it's actually got the same exact feeling as limestone. It's the exact same material as limestone. Now, we also do have some soft corals. So soft coral is also very easy to see. It moves around a lot back and forth in the water. We also have a big giant trevally up the front there, guys, on the right hand side, that big fish. Now, that soft coral does wave back and forth and moves around a lot because it does not contain that hard exoskeleton. That's because it has what we call a hydrostatic skeleton, meaning that that body is actually about 90% water and just polyp. Now, we have over 600 species of coral along the Great Barrier Reef, ladies and gentlemen, so that means it is very hard to remember all of the very hard to pronounce scientific names. So the easiest way we will name a coral is pretty much just naming it based on what it looks like. So if you are looking out right now and you see any piece of coral that kind of looks like a short little bush, those are our shrubby coral. If you see a piece of coral that kind of looks like a tree with no leaves or a bush with no leaves, just a pile of branches, that is our branching coral. If you see a piece of coral, guys, that kind of looks like a big brain, what do you think it's called? Brain coral, yep. So us scientists are very unimaginative when it comes to naming these things. Now, you would have noticed that the coral that we just went past didn't have a lot of big, vibrant colours. Now, I know a lot of people expect to see those rainbows all the time when they're out here on the Great Barrier Reef, especially due to the brochures or any of the photos that you will see when you Google the Great Barrier Reef. However, when the human eye is looking through the water, we actually lose a lot of the colour spectrum. So the first colour that we lose are our reds and our oranges and even some of our warmer toned yellows. That means we're just left with our blues, greens, browns, and sometimes purples. Now, another reason why a lot of this coral does also look a browny colour It's due to the fact that it's actually really healthy and it's getting all the nutrients it needs. So a lot of this coral is covered in a special kind of algae known as zooxanthellae. Now zooxanthellae provides the coral with about 95% of its nutrition through photosynthesis, which means pretty much just getting your energy from the sun. Now in order to get all the nutrition that it needs, these coral need to be covered in it. That's what gives off that browny green colours. Now you might have noticed, guys, if you're looking at a piece of coral, there's not these little tiny fish, oh, big giant sweet lips just down the back there, that big grey fish. Now if you're looking at a small piece of coral, you notice a lot of these little yellow or little bluey green fish hanging out really nice and close. Those little bluey green fish are called your blue-green chromis. So these are a type of dancerfish that hangs out really nice and close to a coral reef. You'll never find them out in the deep sea, and that's because that coral will provide them with a lot of really good protection, especially at night time when the bigger stuff comes out for a hunt, such as your reef sharks or your trevallies. What's really interesting is when you are looking at a entire school of blue-green chromis, typically there's actually only one male and the rest are all females. Giant trevally is back. So this large grey fish with the white fin on top of its body, guys, is the giant trevally. So the most common species of turtles that we get at Green Island are our green sea turtles or our loggerhead sea turtles. You can tell a green sea turtle because it has like a really round head, where the loggerhead has like a bit of a pointy beak. The reason that the green turtle actually has its name is due to the fact that around Green Island you would notice there's a lot of that green seagrass. So they do love to feed off that green seagrass and actually turns the inside of their shell and their skin a black shade green. Now guys, you might notice a little bit of coral rubble sitting on the bottom of this reef here. So that's a lot of that broken up pieces of coral that's settled on the bottom. Now a lot of people think that this is a bad thing, and it can be depending on the amount of damage it is to a reef. However, this is quite common. That's because a lot of this coral is quite brittle. So our branching coral, it's not that plate coral, which is that big round pieces of coral, are actually really brittle because they grow really quickly, which is about 15 to 30 centimeters per year. Now when we get really heavy winds and rains, those waves will crash quite heavily onto a coral reef. A lot of that coral will get broken up and then dispersed around the reef. Now that coral can actually also provide a really good structure for these brand new polyps to settle off and grow from, and actually give us a whole new part of reef. So corals will pretty much only spawn once a year, so that typically will happen around the month of November, and it happens at a very specific time. So the tides need to make sure that they're not changing too much in depth or height. The water needs to be a very specific temperature, around 28 degrees, and the moon needs to be in a specific phase. So typically that will be in a full moon. Now all of these coral will kind of sync up and release their eggs and sperm at the same time. Then that will get carried along with the ocean's currents. They will also mix together. Then those will land in certain areas along the reef, and that will then grow those new coral polyps. surrounding the coral reef are called halos. Now what will happen is at night time, a lot of these fish will come down to these sandy areas and dig inside that sand. That's why you'll probably see a whole lot of holes or little mounds created. What they're trying to dig for is a food, so either crabs, mollusks, crustaceans, anything that they can find. And because that does happen quite frequently, almost every night, that means that that sand is being constantly disturbed, and that means nothing can actually grow there over time. Oh, turtle, right hand side, big one. So that would be a loggerhead sea turtle, looks like. Now, has anybody noticed these kind of spiky looking sausages laying on that sand? Or maybe even like long, thin, black sausages? Now those would be our sea cucumbers. Now they're really important animal out here along the Great Barrier Reef. I know they don't look like much, and they're very simple organisms. They're pretty much only made of a mouth, a tube, and their bum holes. So essentially what these animals will do is they will take massive gulps of sand out of the water. Then they will clean that sand out of any kind of parasites, such as their skin cells, anything like that. Clean that sand, make sure it's nice and clean, and then they'll poo it all out. Now we call this type of animals a key indicator species, meaning that if we see a whole bunch of sea cucumbers in one area, that means that that sand needs to be cleaned. We also have a giant clam down here, guys, right hand side. Kind of looks like a big mouth opening up, a bit purple. Can be disguised as coral as well. So I'll see if we can spot another one and I'll point it out. We also have some sweet leaf chilling on the bottom of the sand here with some Physalia. Arriving at one of my favorite places along this tour. This area is known as Fish Bobby. Now Bobby comes from an indigenous word. It is from the word Bobbora, and that word means to stand alone. So this is a piece of reef that's kind of standing all by itself. Now Fish Bobby is a place where we get a whole bunch of fish aggregations. So a fish aggregation is when we have multiple species of fish kind of joining together in one spot. This is to do a variety of things. So the main thing they'll typically do in these areas is a lot of feeding and socializing. So that means they will come to these areas to find a mate or even lay their eggs, so those eggs can be fertilized. Now we do have a permit with the Great Barrier Marine Park Authority to only feed about a few pallets per tour. This just ensures that these fish still have that natural instinct to go and find food for themselves, and that they don't rely on us as a food source.